Hey guys, I'm Dr Duce and welcome back. Now today I've got something special for you. I thought I'd cook something up for all you old school hip hop heads out there, and all of it's done in Logic Pro X. I've played everything in, and even the vocal sample is a clip from a track I did about 8-9 years ago. So let me show you how it's done, and I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget, if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up and do subscribe. So let's get into it. The sound that sparked this whole track idea is the Vintage Mellotron in Logic 10.4. I really like the sounds that you can combine together to create something unique. Yeah, so this is the sound that really sparked the idea, and I thought, let me create something along the lines of an old school, laid back 86 BPM hip hop vibe. So I'm going to start off by putting down the Mellotron idea and build it from there. Okay, so now that I've got the Mellotron down, I'll lay down the drums and I'll put my bass line down and then add all of the other layers on top. Sound selection is really important when you're doing something like this. When you consider a lot of the old school DJs and producers who created hip hop, they were sampling records, and you think about what they were sampling songs or tracks made by musicians playing real musical instruments. And you think about the era as well. I mean, we're talking about the 60s, the 70s, and the early 80s. Those were the records that were being sampled. So you have to think about the instruments that were being used. Yes, of course, synthesizers were growing in popularity, but most of the samples contained real musicians playing real musical instruments such as bass, drums, horns, strings, keyboards, guitars, and all that sort of thing, you know. Therefore, once I'm done with the rhythm section, I'll be looking to find some sounds in order to make this track fit within the genre. Okay, so now I'm going to start off the drums with Logic's drummer. Then I'm going to replace some of the parts with my own samples, mainly the kick and snare that I'll replace. What I've come up with, I've been messing already, and I've come up with this rhythm right here. Have a listen. Okay, cool. So as I did in my last video, I'm just going to go through the process of converting this to MIDI and then replacing the kick and snare. I'm not going to take time showing you how to do this. If you want to check out my last video on Logic's drummer tracks, bass tracks, and groove track, and I'll go through it in more detail there. But let me just go away, sort this out, and I'll be back in a sec. So rather than actually replace the drummer elements, I'm actually going to reinforce the kick and the snare with my own additional samples. So here's drummer on its own. And adding the other elements. Yeah. And I've added 1 or 2 additional beats in the kick drum section. Here's the original drummer here. This is the MIDI version of drummer, and these are the snares. So now it's time for me to actually lay down my bass line. So I'm just going to work something out based on the groove that I've got here, and then I'll put it down, and then we move on to the next section. Okay, so now that we've got the bass line sorted, I'm going to introduce a sound that you don't hear that often anymore. And it's a sound that I really love, and it's a type of instrument that you would have heard back in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s. And it's the sound of the vibraphone. It sounds something like this. Yeah, that's the kind of vibe, and if I'm going to mix it really nicely into the production, and it will definitely complement what's going on. Let's get this down. Okay, so far we've got most of my core elements, but there's two more bits I'm going to be adding. Firstly, my Wurlitzer or electric piano, and of course my hip hop strings. Now this is a great sound. It's got a great texture. Okay, so I'll be using that. I'll be adding some more strings later on. Now these are the last two sort of core elements I'll be adding. So let's get this done. So far, this is what we've got. We've got our drum section. Then we've got our bass line. Then we've got our sort of chord type elements. And the strings, of course. Okay, so things are taking shape nicely. This bit is really important. I want you to really get this. What we want to create is a sense that the actual musical elements, not so much the rhythm, but the musical elements have been sampled. And it's really important that you understand how to create that illusion. Let's take the vibraphone, for example. Listen to this. Okay. I've just hit stop, and can you hear the reverb tail on that? Let me show you again. Stop. Right? Really long reverb tail. What we want to do is we want to bounce all of these musical elements down to audio. Okay, so let's start with the vibraphone first of all. Let's bounce that down to audio. So select it, bounce in place, and I'm going to make sure that bypass effect plugins is unchecked and include reverb tail in file. Okay, I'm not going to normalize. I'm just going to hit that and okay. Right, so here's our new file, and let's listen to that. I'm going to just cut this back to about here. Right, it just dies. Whereas if I was playing this one, let's pull this back here, switch this one on. Right, that long reverb tail. Now with sample sounds, if they're not set to one shot and you release the trigger, the sound dies. Then that's an illusion we want to create. Of course, we want to fade the end. So as I showed you in one of my previous videos, you select the region, you come to fade out, and you just put a single increment fade on that. And let's have a listen now. Right, so there's no glitch as we heard before where the sample is actually chopped into. There's a slight fade there. So at this point, I'm going to go through and all of these elements that, besides the drums, of course, and the bass line, I'm going to make sure that the appropriate reverb settings have been applied to all of these sounds. I'm going to then bounce them down to audio, and then I'm going to chop them just slightly short so that you hear the cutoff at the end of the sample. Maybe I'll even adjust the start point so they come in a little bit late, creating that sense that they're just different samples that we've actually found from different records and we've put them together. Okay, so let me go away and do that. Okay, so I've gone away and I've bounced down everything besides the bass and the drums and percussion. What I've done here, as you can see, is I've actually chopped into this so it starts a little bit late, and I've chopped the end so it cuts off a little bit early before it loops around the full 2 bars. All of these, you can see they've ended. I've just cut into them, so the reverb tails have been shortened. I've actually cut into the bass line as well, so that ends a little bit early. Okay, so the idea is to create that illusion that these are all samples that have been captured from different sources. So now have a listen to the Mellotron. Okay, so nice little cut in, nice little cut off, okay, on both sections. Okay, that's cool. And let's listen to it all together. Okay, really taking shape. Another thing that I've done is all of these elements right here, I've actually routed them through to output to bus 15. Okay, and on bus 15, which is right here, I've added the new Logic Vintage Tube EQ, and I've just gone for one of the presets, Noisy Mud. The idea is to add a bit of noise, a bit of mud into the mix, to sort of dirty these bits up a little bit, just to create a little bit more of a lo-fi sound. I'm now going to add one of my favorite tools, which is my compressor, and you must check out my video on Logic's vintage compressor types. There'll be a link on the screen. So, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to load this one up. This one, a modeling of the SSL G series mix bus compressor. I'm just going to put some soft distortion on there and nothing else. Just let that run through. Okay, coming along nicely. Now, depending on how your vinyl records were stored, over time, the actual plastic, the actual vinyl tends to warp, and then you get a kind of a warping sound when played back, and that's quite a nice little feature. So you can create your own warping sound by using this plugin, the Audio Unit's new pitch. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to automate everything going through bus 15 to pitch up and down ever so slightly, and that will give you that sort of warping effect. This is just a quick demonstration. However, later on I'll be showing you this other plugin which you'll be able to download for free, and that will do a whole range of vinyl tricks, including warping. Okay, so as you can see right here, I've automated the AU new pitch plugin. Let's play that back and you can hear how it sounds. Okay, so it's very slight warping, but it's enough to kind of create the illusion that maybe this is actually taken from a record. Let's give it this a bit more of a push. Okay, so you don't want that. So let's go back to about that amount. Okay, so that's the AU new pitch plugin, which you can actually pick up from. Come down to Audio Units, you go to Apple, and that's it right there. Okay, stereo. Okay, so I'm going to be adding a few more elements to this production. I'm really happy with it so far. In addition to all of this, I'm going to be adding some strings and horns, and I'm going to be using Logic's new studio horns as well as the studio strings. I'll work this out off screen and then I'll show you what I've come up with. Okay, so I've worked out my horn sections, and these are all selected from the soul section. So this is what this section sounds like. Okay, and what I've done, I've also routed this through to bus 5. So the horns and strings will go through to this bus. I've also put my compressor on, a bit of soft distortion. Again, I've gone for the SSL bus compressor, and this time I've used the new Vintage console EQ. I've gone for the pop strings preset, and I've also added the new Space Designer with a string hall preset. Have a quick listen to the strings. Again, I've used the Soul Selection strings. They've all been routed through to bus 5, and they're going to be processed through all of the processing on here. Now, it's this great plugin by iZotope called iZotope Vinyl. Now, you can get this absolutely free. If you check the description, all of these things here, you can apply to any signal passing through this. So you'll have it as an insert rather than as on an auxiliary, I'd imagine. I'm using it on the master bus. So the main stereo out, you can use it on a bus and pass things through it that way. And I'm putting everything through this plugin. So let's test it out and see what we get. I think it's pretty cool. You know, you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can mess, you know, to your heart's content. You can switch to mono here, and then you've got the different sort of RPM or speeds and different eras as well. So this is more of like a dynamics control, which is kind of cool. The only downside is that even when the track is not playing, you still get that sound coming through. So you got to hit the bypass. Nevertheless, it's really, really a brilliant little tool that you can use just to kind of add that extra element to your production. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go away now and just finish off tightening things up, and then I'll play the track through a couple of times, and then that'll be it. So let me go away and do that. Okay, so I've gone through and I've made all of my adjustments. I'm pretty much there. I might do 1 or 2 additional changes, but I'm pretty confident that this is what I'm going to run with. However, I wanted to add one additional element. I looked through some of my old recordings and I found something that I did about probably 10 years ago, and I've nicked a little section from this. So here's the original.
Girls.
Right. Okay, so all I've done is real simple. It's worked out really well. I've just nicked this section right here up to this point, and I've just clipped that, get rid of that, just using Logic's quick time stretching function. Hold it down the Option key, click, drag, drop at the bottom, and then I was able to quickly time stretch. This right here is a breath. So that's the vocal up here, by the way. That's the vocal right there. And I'm just showing you how I came about getting it to fit. Turns out that the actual vocal clip is in a key that works well with the arrangement. So all I did was chop out this breath right here, and I think I'll take this one out as well from this, and just repeated it. So let's have a listen now and see what we've got with that mixed in. Okay, so I've laid this out in just 16 bars, so you can kind of get an idea of the vibe that I've come up with. I've got these are the settings I've got on the Isotope vinyl. I've also engaged a noise gate onto the master stereo bus, so when we hit this gap right here, everything actually cuts out completely dead, and we're just monitoring our levels here. So I'll play out with the track, but do remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you're finding my tutorials helpful. I'll be back real soon, so watch out for more and enjoy.